When do we get aggressive? Well, as Gordon says, frustration is the engine of aggression. Frustration is the engine of aggression. And when are we frustrated? When our needs or our perceived needs are not met. And what is our biggest need? Our attachment relationships. Why do kids get aggressive? Because their biggest need is not being met. Now, do we make things better if we time out them and separate from them and punish them? Is that going to help their frustration? Is that going to help their aggression? Or do they need us more at that point to intervene in a very positive and loving way with them? Which means we have to overcome our own emotional barriers to doing that, because we're frustrated. We're human beings, right? That's why it has to start here. I'll finish off by telling you about oppositionality a little bit. And this is, I don't know how much I'm repeating what Gordon may have said, but just put your hand out, okay? So I'm pushing on your hand right now. What are you doing?
Pushing back.
And the harder I push, the harder you push back, right? Did you think about it, or was it automatic? Totally automatic. This is what Gordon calls counterwill. Counterwill is an automatic resistance to any sense of coercion. So as soon as you sense that you're being coerced, physically or emotionally, you're going to resist. Now, that's good because we're only pushed around. And, by the way, I don't know how to tell you this, but the more immature we are, the more automatic the resistance is. Okay? So when do we start seeing the resistance actually? In kids? 1.5 years. What's the word they start saying? No. Everything is no. You put your shoes on, no. Eat your breakfast, no. A friend of mine, Harold, told his son Ben to eat Ben, do you want an apple? No, I want an apple. And there's a reason behind it. The reason is that the child needs to become an individual. The child simply can't absorb the will of the parent and become a self-functioning, self-respecting individual. She needs to develop her own sense of meaning, purpose, understanding of the world, opinions, desires, needs, personality. Now, how does a kid do that when the parents are so much more powerful? Well, nature gives us counterwill. There's resistance. And behind that wall of no's, when that kid is saying no, he or she can learn to say yes. Because if you don't know how to say no, your yeses don't mean anything at all. Before we can say yes to something, we have to say no. Now we can figure out what do we want, and what I want to say yes to, what I'm going to say no to. So that oppositionality, if you want to call it that, is nature's little fence to protect your child's little incipient little will. Behind that fence, the child can develop their sense of individuality, which begins around 2 years. It kicks in against around adolescence. It's with us all our life, but really its purpose is to maintain our individuality. Now, as we just demonstrated though, the harder I push, the harder you pushed back. It's the same with counterwill. The more we push on kids, the more they're going to push back at us. And this is true where you're rewarding them or you're punishing them, by the way. That's why putting stars on the fridge doesn't work. Because in the reward, the kid gets that there's something you want him to do more than he wants to do it himself. So that star is nothing but a form of positive coercion. Any other context, we call it bribery. I know you don't want to do this, so I'm going to reward you. Well, that works for a while, but the resistance keeps building and building and building. So it always breaks down in the end. Now, what mitigates that counterwill, what makes it easier to manage, it's there, it's a challenge, but it's easier to manage if the child is wanting to connect with you. Because the relationship mitigates the oppositionality. But what happens to kids who lose the attachment contact with adults, especially when they become peer connected, like Gordon probably talked to you about yesterday? Then you're left with nothing but the resistance, and there's not the relationship to mitigate it. Now the way to deal with that resistance is not that you increase the force, because when you do, you're just going to get more resistance. You build up the relationship to mitigate the resistance. So the solution is not less relationship, but more relationship. Not more distance, but more proximity.